Hey, what's up, my ninjas? Shinobi here with another Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls beta video for you. A lot of people have been asking me, Shinobi, show the Demon Hunter. We've got to see the Demon Hunter. You know, you're known for the Demon Hunter. It's your favorite class. I mean, are you having a blast? Do you feel like they got better? Do you feel like they got worse? You know, what's good? What's bad? Show us the skills that you're using. You know, because on stream, people have been watching me just clear Torment really easily on the Demon Hunter. And I want to talk a little bit about that as well, on some of the strengths and weaknesses behind the Demon Hunter right now. And then we'll also get into the spec and the gear that I'm using, and maybe give you a little bit of tips for when you first get into Reaper of Souls, because if things don't change in Reaper of Souls, then, you know, you can actually use this guide to help you right in the beginning. Like, as soon as you get to, you know, level 60 and you're, you know, leveling up to get to level 70, and after you get to level 70, how do you gear out? What do you do? So hopefully this gives you some kind of help with that situation. One thing that I've noticed right off the bat with the Demon Hunter is that resource management is kind of tough. You have things in regular Diablo 3 like Dead Man's Legacy and things like that that are guaranteed to give you all the stats that you need. You get that hatred regen, you get all these things, and it's very difficult to get resource regen unless you find a lot of legendaries. So that will take time. So you have to be, you know, pretty, you know, you have to think a lot on like which abilities you're going to use, so you don't use up too much resources and you also still farm efficiently at the same time. So that's one thing I have noticed, and this isn't just for Demon Hunter. Like, every class I'm seeing has really tough time getting their resources managed. So, you know, that's going to get better with time. When, you know, with the legendaries, they have more properties, and, you know, it's just going to get better. But right now, when you have a lot of rares and a couple legendaries, it's a little trickier. But, you know, and one thing I also noticed with the Demon Hunter is that the, you know, if you guys remember in the beginning of Diablo 3, Demon Hunters and Monks were like the only two classes that could do Infernal difficulty. I'm talking about the first couple weeks. I'm talking before Whirlwind Barbs came out, before all that kind of stuff. You know, even Barbarians in the first couple weeks, you know, would have like 5,000 damage and like all this defense and stuff just to try and even do anything, and they killed things very slowly. Yeah, maybe they didn't die, but it wasn't very efficient. And Monks and Demon Hunters are by far the most efficient in the beginning, and right now it seems almost the same way too. I haven't experimented with Monk too much, but Demon Hunters feel like they're in a good place. I feel like they're a lot stronger, but they're also a lot better. They don't really depend on gear quite as much. Now, some skills that they use do depend on having good gear, and they flourish when you have good gear, but some skills don't really depend on it as much for the Demon Hunter, which gives you a little bit of an advantage. That's why I'm looking forward to that being my first class that I play in the beginning of Reaper of Souls. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the gear, some of the spec that I've set up here, and you can see just in the background just how much I just destroy things, you know, in Reaper of Souls here on Torment difficulty. So let's get into that right now. Let me change the scene. So right off the bat, you can see that I have about 1 million damage. I have about almost 6 million toughness. The healing is something that you don't really want to worry too much about because my spec is going to heal me, and I'll show you that a little bit in just a second. Remember, lifesteal is not really a factor in this game anymore. It has been nerfed through the ground, and you can't really get it on weapons or anything like that. But yeah, so what did I do with my gear, and why am I using some of the items that I'm using? Well, first off, when you get to level 70, you know, you're only going to find rares for quite a while. I mean, you're going to get a couple legendaries, but, you know, some legendaries you may get, you know, they're going to have these special properties on them, like you can see at the bottom, where you take 25% less damage from enemies that are stunned. Well, there's not really a good stun build for Demon Hunters that you could really utilize this item with. So I'm mainly just using this item for the fact that legendaries usually have higher property-based stats like dexterity and vitality, resist, and such like that. And that's pretty much why I'm using the bracers to begin with. But, you know, until you find those endgame items, until you find like a bunch of legendaries, you're gonna spec yourself differently later on. Like for endgame, this is not an endgame spec that I'm showing you right now. This is a getting you started spec because it flourishes through, you know, being under geared. So you can see my shoulders here, dexterity, vitality, resist, life percent, you know, just the kind of basic stats. I'm still using the same amulet that I was before. You have the shoulders, the chest piece here, gloves. Still using my witching hour from before. From what I've seen so far, I have not seen any any belts in this game that give you crit damage on them, like legendaries or whatever. I don't know if that will happen eventually, but I mean, I would probably lose about 100,000 damage on my damage here if I, you know, switched out for a belt that gives you a lot of survivability. Because what are you normally going to get on a rare belt? You're going to get dexterity, vitality, like, you know, armor or resist, or armor and resist, or like say resist and life percent. Like, yes, your survivability is going to be a lot better. I'd probably jump up to about 7 million toughness if I did that, but I would lose quite a bit of damage and quite a bit of crit damage. I don't really feel like losing 50% crit damage, so I'm going to wait and, you know, find a better item there. So this might be something you're still going to be using by the time you're 70, depending on what you find. And then, you know, just looking at just all the basic stuff, nothing really too spectacular out there. And yeah, so this is a crafted two-hand weapon that I got, and that's right, not using a crossbow. I get to use a bow. Whoa, imagine that. I talked about this in previous videos and changes we'd like to see in Demon Hunter, and I get to use a bow, and I'm happy. Now, what happened with this, when I rolled this crafted bow, I'll show you, you know, where you get it and stuff. It rolled dexterity, vitality, and a socket. So it was good for me because when you first get into Reaper of Souls, you can re-roll the damage on your weapons, and you can make. I've seen people that are still using calamities because they re-roll the damage, and you know it's much better now. You know, and you know, and so it actually upgraded their weapons. So when you first start out as a demon hunter or any class really, you can use items from before. But what I decided to do is when I got this was much bigger of an upgrade than the Manticore that I had before. So, you know, salvage that Manticore. It felt weird, but had to do it. This was such much bigger upgrade for me here. And this is what I got from right over here. From the artisan, you can see it's the Unbound Bolt. These are some of the materials that are required for this. Finding these white items, you get them from weapon racks, most likely. That's the most you usually get them is from weapon racks. You can also get the armor ones too, which come from armor racks. And then this is the brimstone of the expansion. So that's pretty much the item right there. I probably crafted that about 2 or 3 times before I got the one that I wanted, and it worked out pretty well. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the major changes to the Demon Hunter. For instance, you can look in here, and Night Stalker is still here, which is good, and I'm using it, but I feel like it got nerfed a lot, because it says critical hits have a chance to restore 1 of your discipline, but we don't know what that chance is, and we've never known what that chance is. But it has been pretty decent in the past, but for right now, it feels like it's a lot lower than it used to be. So I feel like that did get nerfed. The passives that I'm running here, Archery, got the 8% increased damage from bows. Night Stalker, like we talked about. Blood Vengeance, because like I talked about earlier, getting those resources up seems to be quite difficult in Reaper of Souls, but they did actually make this pretty awesome here. You can see 25, increase your hatred by 25, you gain 40 hatred and 4 discipline when healed by health globes, and they named it to Blood Vengeance because we have the new ability now called Vengeance, so they had to rename this item so they could bring the other one in. And then we had the last one, Grenader, because I do use grenades, so it gives me an increased grenade damage by 20% and makes the explosion even bigger, you know, a bigger radius in the explosion, which does help out as well, too, for the spec that I'm using. Some of the new passives that we got here, if you haven't seen them yet, Ambush, you deal 40% additional damage to enemies above 80% life. This is a situational thing. Maybe I'll mess around with it in the future. Awareness, gain 4% dodge chance every second. So it's kind of the equivalent of Sharpshooter, but, you know, I'd rather build my characters to be good all the time than to rely on stats or to rely on skills to make my character better, right? That's kind of like, if you don't have enough dodge and you have to use something like this, just get more dodge, you know? That's kind of how it is. Get your dexterity up. You don't have to rely on something like this. Same with Sharpshooter. Just get your crit chance up so you don't have to rely on something like Sharpshooter, which is such a very situational thing. And then you have Singled Out, which gain 25% crit chance against enemies who are more than 20 yards away from you, which is okay for group play. Same with Steady Aim. I've said that for a long time now. It's great for group play because you have them CC like over here and you're standing back here and you can just, you know, take them out really easily. But those are the passives there. Now onto the primary, using grenades here, and you throw 180% damage here. Throw out 3 grenades. I can show you a little bit of what that looks like. And I feel like right now, from a lot of testing, this has been building hatred faster than almost any primary skill out there. I don't know if that's a bug or what the case is, but it feels like it builds it a lot faster. So that's why I'm using it. And it's pretty good damage. Now we're using cluster arrow with cluster bombs. You guys remember this from the beginning of Diablo 3. Now they did obviously increase the damage because, you know, the game, those monsters have lots of health, so they had to increase the damage on a lot of these abilities. But at the same time, cluster arrow is such a perfect skill that just really just shows that when you're under geared, you need to use things like this. And yes, because it costs so much hatred, it's not something you want to be using for efficiency when you have good gear. When you have good gear, you can use things that aren't quite like this, you know, because then, you know, you take a skill that wasn't really that good before, but it's a very efficient skill, and then when you have good gear, it makes up for the fact that that skill wasn't that good, and now you're just efficient in killing things really quickly. You know, a poignant example would be something like Elemental Arrow. You know, Elemental Arrow didn't start getting used for a while after people stopped using Cluster Arrow because their gear started getting better. So, same situation in the beginning of Reaper of Souls here. We're using Smokescreen again. Oh my god, I'm so happy. They buffed it too. Like, the normal Smokescreen does not really that good. It's still nerfed like it was before, but we have a skill called Healing Vapors. Regenerate 15% of your life while invisible, and you will not believe how crucial this ability really is. Not only does it protect you from getting killed or snared or something like that, but it also heals you back up. And you can see that I have almost 500,000 health. So you do get quite a lot of health back up, and if you get your discipline up really quickly, I mean, you're going to be invincible. You're just not going to die. You can just keep cycling that out and keep healing up as much as you need to. Then we have here the next one, Vengeance with Seath. Now, I use Vengeance with Seath because it gives you... Now, what is Vengeance first? Because, you know, it's probably important to talk about. It's just a crazy cooldown that just does massive damage, as you saw in this on the screen earlier. It just blows things up. You know, it lasts for 15 seconds. You're just doing lots of damage from the side to the front, and it's just, you know, using a lot of the different abilities that the Demon Hunter has and putting them all together to do nice burst damage. But I'm using this one here because the hatred, you get 15 hatred per second. That's nuts. Now, I probably wouldn't be using this if I had a lot of legendaries. I wouldn't be using this because my hatred would probably be regenerating a decent amount to begin with. So I'd be using something like, you know, it gives you 300% weapon damage per second to enemies around you, so you do some AoE damage. There's a couple other ones too, like launch grenades, heal for 6% of maximum life each second. So that I used to use that while leveling up. It's a very good thing right off the bat. If you want to use this and you're just getting into Reaper of Souls, you know, use this ability and, you know, you pretty much become unkillable. You're just sitting there healing like crazy while you're using Vengeance. But I really like this one because it just enables me to spam cluster arrows as much as I want and just demolish things, you know, especially versus bosses, elites, things like that. Now, we're using the Companion. I talked about an earlier video. The Companion, the Wolf Companion, has been buffed. They now have these cooldowns with the activate and the passive that's on there. And the Wolf Companion gives you 30% increased damage for 10 seconds. Just so good for burst. These are things that increase your damage by X amount. These are what make undergeared characters do well. So, you know, even if you're playing another class, like a Barbarian or a Witch Doctor or something like that, something that's going to give you increased damage by X% is going to give you, you know, a bigger advantage. It might not be something you'd use when you're, you know, geared out, because you might not have to rely on that. You can use more efficient things, because having to wait, you know, 30 seconds to use this activate ability, you know, it's not that fantastic, but there are cooldown reduction stuff in the game. So I'm going to be, you know, later on when we have a bunch of legendaries and we have a bunch of cooldown reduction on our gear, imagine if you could spam this, how badass that would be, you know, just going around just blowing things up like crazy all the time. So, you know, that's pretty crazy. So that's something we may see in the future here. But yeah, it's definitely 30% increased damage. Just destroy elites quickly. And trash mobs, not something that you really have a problem with to begin with. Always spec your characters for elites, bosses, stuff like that. Killing trash mobs, almost any of your skills. I can sit here and just grenade things and kill trash mobs, you know? So if your gear is decent enough, you don't have to rely on that. I like to use things that give me lots of burst damage towards things that have a lot of health, and things that I need to get down quickly. Now, I'm using Preparation here with Punishment to get much more of that hatred back again. It's something I can use while I'm waiting for my Vengeance to be off cooldown. So it just gives me a lot of hatred all the time to keep constantly shooting out these. And, you know, it's a little difficult to aim this sometimes, so if you don't like that one that much, you can always go with Loaded for Bear, which got increased by damage by a lot, and it's a more direct damage spell like that. And, you know, it's pretty decent. You can do quite a bit of damage. And you can see you can just shoot a couple more there. And then when you use Blood Vengeance here, and you're just kind of shooting. See, I shot 2 of them right there. 1, 2, again. Like, the damage that I'm putting out right now, and I'm not even using the Wolf, that is a lot of damage right there. And that could mow things down quickly, as you saw in the video earlier. So, hope this does help you out, guys. I think that Demon Hunter is in a decent spot. I'm very curious to see how Demon Hunters will pan out as the expansion goes on for longer and longer, and to see if what things get nerfed or buffed, or, you know, what items come out. Because we've got to remember, the way that your character, like any character, is going to be, you know, pretty much one-dimensional when you have gear like this, where you're like, just put, you know, dexterity and vitality and resist, like we've always done. But what's going to separate you to be able to do Torment 6 and those harder difficulties is the fact that you're going to be able to, you know, get these legendaries that have the special effects on them that, you know, I've heard, like, there's some legendaries out there, like there's some boots that you get movement speed based on the health that you've lost or something like that. So that's just really great for moving around quickly and being very efficient. So that's just one, for instance. There's a lot better legendaries out there. So thanks for everybody for watching the video and, you know, checking out the Demon Hunter. I think that I'm pretty happy with some of the changes that have been made with the Demon Hunter. I still feel like they need to be a little bit stronger in some areas, but I'll be interested to see what happens in the future. We'll see. So anyways, my name is Shinobi, and also have a happy holidays, guys. I know that you're probably watching this on Christmas Eve or maybe Christmas Day. If you celebrate Christmas, happy Christmas or Merry Christmas to you. If you celebrate any of the other stuff, happy holidays. You know, be safe out there. You know, don't do anything stupid like drinking and driving and all that kind of stuff. That's just dumb people do that stuff. Don't do that stuff. Be safe. Have a good holiday. And I'm Shinobi. And until next time, thanks for watching.